The avoidant thought they had you mapped out completely. They believed they understood your patterns, could predict your reactions, knew exactly how much they could get away with before you'd complain but ultimately accept. They saw you as safe, controllable, someone who would always be there no matter how they behaved. But something has shifted dramatically, and the avoidant is now confronting a reality that terrifies them. You're not who they thought you were. You're powerful in ways they never anticipated. You're unpredictable in ways that remove their sense of control. The person they thought was safely attached and manageable is actually someone with agency, boundaries, and the capacity to completely upend their expectations. This realization is shaking the avoidant's entire framework because their whole strategy was built on you being predictable. Now that you're not, now that they can't anticipate your moves or control your responses, they're experiencing fear and fascination in equal measure. Here's what the avoidant is realizing about your power and unpredictability, and why this discovery is fundamentally changing how they see you and the relationship. You're no longer reacting the way they expected. The avoidant had your reactions mapped out based on past patterns. When they withdrew, you used to pursue. When they were distant, you used to seek reassurance. When they pulled away, you used to try harder to connect. They could predict your responses, and this predictability gave them control and comfort. But now you're not following the script. When they withdraw, you let them go. When they're distant, you're indifferent. When they pull away, you don't chase. This deviation from expected patterns is deeply unsettling because the avoidant's entire relationship strategy was built on your predictable responses. The unpredictable reactions force the avoidant to actually pay attention to you in ways they never had to before. When you were predictable, they could run their patterns on autopilot, knowing you'd respond in ways that allowed them to maintain control and distance. But now they can't assume anything about how you'll respond. Each interaction requires them to actually engage, to consider your state, to be present rather than operating from their defended automatic patterns. This requirement for presence and attention is uncomfortable, but also makes you infinitely more interesting to them than you were when you were predictable. Your unpredictability also removes their ability to manipulate outcomes. The avoidant is used to being able to manage situations by anticipating reactions. If they know you'll chase when they withdraw, they can use withdrawal to control the dynamic. But if they don't know whether you'll chase, withdraw yourself, or do something completely unexpected, they've lost their leverage. Subscribe for insights into attachment psychology that reveal why unpredictability affects avoidance so intensely. This loss of manipulative control forces the avoidant to engage authentically rather than strategically, which is deeply threatening to someone whose entire relational approach is based on maintaining control through distance and predictability. You've stopped making yourself small to accommodate them. The avoidant is realizing you're no longer shrinking yourself to fit into the limited space they offer. You used to minimize your needs, adjust your expectations, accept breadcrumbs as enough. You made yourself small and manageable so the relationship could continue on their terms. But you're not doing that anymore. You're taking up space. You're expressing needs without apology. You're requiring them to actually show up or face consequences. This expansion of your presence in the relationship is powerful because it forces the avoidant to either step up or step back, removing the comfortable middle ground where they could keep you while doing minimal work. The refusal to minimize yourself also demonstrates a level of self-worth the avoidant didn't know you had. They thought your willingness to accept less meant you believed you deserved less, but you're showing them that your previous accommodation was choice, not lack of options or self-esteem. You chose to make space for their limitations, but you're no longer choosing that. This revelation that you have standards and will enforce them is powerful because it means you're not someone who will tolerate poor treatment indefinitely. The avoidant is realizing they actually have to earn your presence rather than assuming it will always be available. Your expansion also reveals that you were never actually small or limited. You were always this powerful, this capable of taking up space. You were just choosing to contain yourself for their comfort. Now that you're no longer doing that, the avoidant is seeing your full presence, and it's overwhelming in the best and most threatening way. They're attracted to your power while simultaneously scared of it because powerful people can't be controlled, and control is the avoidant's primary relationship strategy. You're thriving without their validation. The avoidant is watching you build an amazing life that doesn't revolve around them or require their validation. You're pursuing goals, developing yourself, creating fulfillment from sources that have nothing to do with them. This independence and thriving is powerful because it proves you don't need them in the ways they assumed you did. The avoidant thought they were central to your happiness, that their attention was what made you feel valuable. But you're demonstrating that you're complete without them, and this completeness is both attractive and threatening. Your thriving also makes you unpredictable because the avoidant can't use their presence or absence to control your emotional state. When you needed their validation, they could withdraw it to make you chase or give it to keep you content. But now your emotional state isn't tied to them. You're happy when they're present, and you're happy when they're absent. This emotional independence means they can't predict or control how you'll feel, which removes one of their primary sources of power in the relationship. The independent thriving also shows the avoidant what they're missing by not being fully present. You're becoming someone increasingly amazing, and they're watching from the sidelines. They're realizing that if they don't step up, they'll be watching you build this incredible life with someone else or beautifully alone. This recognition that you're not waiting for them, that your life is progressing wonderfully without them at the center, creates urgency. The avoidant is used to people waiting, hoping, organizing their lives around potential reconciliation. But you're not waiting, you're living, and that unpredictability about whether they'll even have a chance to be part of your life again is terrifying and compelling. You've demonstrated you can actually leave. The most powerful and unpredictable thing you've done is prove you're genuinely capable of walking away. The avoidant thought you were attached in ways that would keep you there despite their patterns. They believed your love would make you stay regardless of how they treated you. But you've shown that you're willing to lose them rather than accept treatment that doesn't meet your standards. This capacity to actually leave is power the avoidant severely underestimated. The demonstrated ability to leave also proves you're not bluffing about your boundaries. Many people threaten to leave but don't follow through. The avoidant learns to ignore these threats because they're empty. But you didn't threaten, you just left. Or you've made it clear through your actions and detachment that you're already gone emotionally even if you're still physically present. This follow-through on boundaries is unpredictable because the avoidant expected you to eventually back down like you had before or like others have. But you didn't. You meant what you said, and that changes everything. Your willingness to walk away also shifts the power dynamic completely. The avoidant is used to being the one who could take or leave the relationship. They held the power to end things. But you've shown you also have that power and you're willing to use it. Now the avoidant can't assume you'll be there. They can't take you for granted. They actually have to consider that their patterns might cost them something they value. This shift from them holding the exit power to both of you having it is fundamentally different and requires the avoidant to engage differently if they want you to stay. You're not seeking their approval or explanation. The avoidant is realizing you're no longer seeking their approval, validation, or explanation for their behavior. You used to need to understand why they acted the way they did. You used to seek their perspective, try to get them to explain themselves, want their validation that you weren't too much or too needy. But you've stopped seeking any of that. You're making your own assessments, trusting your own perceptions, validating yourself. This independence from their approval is powerful because it means they can't use withholding or granting approval as a control mechanism. The lack of seeking explanations also shows you've accepted their patterns as information rather than problems to solve. You're not trying to understand them anymore because you've seen enough to understand they are who they are. This acceptance without trying to change or figure them out is unpredictable because most people in relationship with avoidance spend enormous energy trying to understand and adjust to their patterns. But you're not doing that work anymore. You're just observing, assessing, and making decisions based on reality rather than potential. Your independence from their narrative also means you're not believing their defensive stories. The avoidant is used to being able to explain away their behavior in ways that make you doubt your perceptions. But you're not buying their explanations anymore. You're trusting what you've experienced over what they say. This refusal to accept their framing is powerful because it means they can't gaslight you or manage your perception. You're seeing them clearly and making choices based on that clarity rather than the story they want you to believe. You've become comfortable with their discomfort. The avoidant is noticing that you're no longer trying to manage their comfort or prevent their withdrawal. You used to be so careful not to push too hard, not to ask for too much, not to make them uncomfortable with your needs or emotions, but you've stopped managing them. You express what you need without worrying about whether it makes them uncomfortable. You set boundaries without concern for whether they like it. You live your life without organizing it around their triggers. This comfort with their discomfort is powerful because it shows you've prioritized your own well-being over their comfort. The shift also demonstrates you're not afraid of them leaving anymore. When you were managing their comfort, it was because you feared that if they got uncomfortable, they'd leave. But now you're not preventing their discomfort, which means you're okay with them leaving if they can't handle reality. This fearlessness is unpredictable because the avoidant is used to people being controlled by fear of abandonment. But you're not controlled by that fear. You'd rather them leave than continue shrinking yourself to manage their nervous system. Your comfort with their discomfort also creates opportunities for them to grow if they choose to. When everyone manages the avoidant's comfort, the avoidant never has to confront their patterns or do uncomfortable work. But you're not protecting them from discomfort anymore. If your needs make them uncomfortable, that's information for them about their limitations. If your boundaries trigger them, that's their work to do. You're creating space for them to either grow or leave, and that binary choice is more threatening and potentially transformative than the comfortable middle ground where you managed their triggers for them. You're displaying emotions without needing their response. The avoidant is witnessing you express your full range of emotions without needing them to do anything about it. You're not performing emotions to get a response from them. You're just being authentically emotional and handling those emotions yourself. You might express hurt, anger, disappointment, or frustration, but you're not making your emotional state their responsibility to fix. This emotional authenticity without dependence is powerful because it shows emotional maturity the avoidant lacks. The authentic emotionality without need for response is also unpredictable because avoidants are used to emotions being weapons or manipulations. When you're upset, they expect you're trying to make them feel guilty or get them to do something. But you're not using emotions that way. You're just being human and processing feelings out loud without agenda. This removes the avoidant's defensive response because there's nothing to defend against. You're not attacking or demanding. You're just being real. Your self-sufficient emotional processing also shows the avoidant what secure attachment looks like. You can feel things intensely and still be okay. You can express needs without being desperate. You can be hurt without being destroyed. You can want things from them without needing those things to survive. This demonstration of emotional strength and security is powerful because it shows the avoidant that emotions don't have to be the threat they believe them to be. You're modeling a different way of being that challenges all their defensive assumptions. You've stopped trying to change or fix them. The avoidant is realizing you're no longer trying to help them heal, change their patterns, or become more emotionally available. You used to invest energy in understanding their wounds, encouraging their growth, believing in their potential. But you've stopped all that. You've accepted them exactly as they are right now, and you're making your choices based on that reality rather than potential. This acceptance without trying to change them is powerful because it removes the pressure they usually feel and resent. The acceptance without change efforts is also unpredictable because it signals you've given up on them becoming what you need. This should feel relieving to the avoidant, no more pressure to be different, but it actually feels threatening because it means you're prepared to walk away from them as they are. The avoidant is realizing that your previous efforts to help them change were actually investment in the relationship. Now that you've stopped investing, it suggests you're divesting, preparing to leave, no longer seeing them as worth the effort. Your acceptance of their current state also shifts responsibility entirely to them. You're not going to do the work of changing them. You're not going to push them toward growth. If they want to keep you, they'll have to change themselves. And if they don't change, they'll lose you. This clarity is powerful because it removes all ambiguity. The avoidant can't blame you for not being patient enough or understanding enough. You were those things, and it wasn't enough to motivate their change. Now they have to decide if they value you enough to do their own work without you pushing them. The avoidant is realizing how powerful and unpredictable you are. The avoidant thought they had you mapped out completely. They believed they understood your patterns, could predict your reactions, knew exactly how much they could get away with before you'd complain but ultimately accept their behavior. They saw you as safe, controllable, someone who would always be there no matter how they behaved or how little they offered. But something has shifted dramatically, and the avoidant is now confronting a reality that terrifies them. You're not who they thought you were at all. You're powerful in ways they never anticipated. You're unpredictable in ways that remove their sense of control over the relationship dynamic. The person they thought was safely attached and manageable is actually someone with agency, boundaries, and the capacity to completely upend their expectations and assumptions. This realization is shaking the avoidant's entire framework because their whole relationship strategy was built on you being predictable and controllable. Now that you're not, now that they can't anticipate your moves or control your responses through their usual tactics, they're experiencing fear and fascination in equal measure. Here's what the avoidant is realizing about your power and unpredictability, and why this discovery is fundamentally changing how they see you and the relationship. What this realization is doing to them. The avoidance realization of your power and unpredictability is creating massive internal conflict that they're struggling to manage. Part of them is deeply attracted to your strength and independence in ways they didn't expect. Powerful people are compelling and magnetic. Unpredictable people are interesting and captivating. The avoidant is experiencing genuine fascination with who you're revealing yourself to be. They're seeing you with new eyes and recognizing qualities they didn't know you possessed. But another part of them is terrified because they can't control you anymore, can't predict you, can't manage the relationship on their terms the way they always have. This conflict is forcing the avoidant to make a choice they've been avoiding their entire life. They have to decide if they're willing to show up differently, to be with someone powerful and unpredictable who won't accept their defended patterns, or if they'd rather retreat to the safety of being with someone manageable who accepts their limitations without challenge. This choice is uncomfortable because it requires the avoidant to be honest about what they're capable of and what they actually want from relationship. They can't have both the comfort of control and the reward of being with you. They have to choose. The realization is also potentially catalyzing growth if the avoidant is capable of it and willing to do the work. Seeing your power might inspire them to develop their own emotional strength. Witnessing your unpredictability might help them understand that relationships don't have to be controlled to be safe. Experiencing you as strong and independent might teach them that they can be vulnerable without being consumed or losing themselves. Whether this growth actually happens depends entirely on the avoidant's willingness to do uncomfortable therapeutic work. But your power and unpredictability have at least created the conditions where growth becomes possible if they choose it. The conflict also includes the avoidant recognizing they might lose you if they don't change. Your power and unpredictability mean you're not waiting around for them to figure themselves out. You're living your life, making choices that serve you, and those choices might not include them if they can't step up. This recognition that you're genuinely willing to walk away and thrive without them creates urgency the avoidant has never felt before. They're used to having time, having people wait, having the power to return whenever they're ready. But you're not giving them that power anymore, and this loss of control over timing and outcomes is forcing them to actually make decisions rather than keeping all options open indefinitely while doing nothing. Whether any of this leads to actual change or just temporary pursuit, before they revert to patterns depends on the avoidant's level of self-awareness and commitment to healing. But one thing is certain, they'll never see you the same way again. You've shown them you're not who they thought you were, and that revelation has permanently changed the dynamic. The only question is whether they'll rise to meet you at this new level, or whether they'll retreat from someone too powerful and unpredictable for their defended system to handle.